First of all, quick point of hand. Chester County Action has started. There were 2 tables, and now look at this room. She's really done an amazing job of getting the message out, not only as to the need for conservative Republicans, conservative candidates, but also the need to send a message as to how we should focus ourselves in our lives and what's important. So look at the room. I was at a meeting a little while ago with the advisory group, and they do a phenomenal job. So give a bigger hand than you did. Also, Rich was up earlier. We'll be there this afternoon as you go through Westchester. I just want to say something about the sheepdogs. Not necessarily arguing as to the peace movement across the street, which, by the way, when you look at a flag with a peace sign on it, that to me is somewhat sacrilegious, but I guess I'm getting very conservative at my old age. But the fact that they're there, and they've been there since the beginning of the war in Iraq. And 2 things I'll say before I talk about this year's election, and that is, it's interesting as to right now, as to what's happening in Libya and how the current president handled himself when that civil war started. If that had been something that the Republican President George Bush did a few years ago, there'd been calls for his head in impeachment at this point in time. But it does show you that American involvement in the Middle East is extremely important, that we can meet here today this way. People hear me say that about our meetings all the time, whether it was the Republican dinner last Tuesday night, whether it's the commissioner meeting and work that goes on in our courthouse. Our free system, our free enterprise, our free freedoms themselves are caused by men and women around this world from this country that keep us safe. So if you could just give them a moment of silence, please, and remember them for a few seconds today, that as you're here eating your meal, they are doing what they need to do to make sure you have the opportunity to do that. Thank you. Well, last time I talked about St. Paul and Williams. Now we're going to talk about all politics are local. Could the elected officials that are here today stand up, please? That's not quite all of you. Can the elected officials that are local elected officials, not county elected officials, stand up? Stand up. Think about where we are this year. Lieutenant Governor Coley has a great saying, because he was a commissioner in Bucks County, and he says, I really used to get very upset when people would talk about these elections as off-year elections. That this is an election that you don't really pay attention to because it's not a presidential or gubernatorial election year. By the same token, when you really truly think about it, as he said, if your name is on the ballot, it is not an off-year election. It's an election that you're into making sure that you can win the best you can. Now, the Republican Party in this county, I personally think that our farm team and everything starts at a level lower than the county. If you look at the resume of a lot of the county elected officials, they started as supervisors, borough councilmen, various other school board members, some of them in other aspects of local politics. But that's really where we're affected, aren't we? Your school board members raise your taxes much more than your county, don't they, Sean?
Not this year.
And those of you who go to supervisor meetings understand what a supervisor goes through. It's a very thankless job. Nobody ever comes to a supervisor meeting to tell them what a great job they're doing. Most of the time when the room is full, it's full because somehow somebody doesn't like what the township is doing. Even though the supervisors may think it's the right thing to do at given times. But as you go through this year's election, remember that they are the most important positions that affect your yard, affect your property, and affect your citizens and your townships. Because this county has a great system of electing its local officials, and all of them go in to do one thing, and that's serve the public, whether it's at the county level or at the local level. But as you move forward, remember to look at the supervisor's race, look at the school board race. It's very difficult for Governor Corbett to go up there and start to figure out a budget and to make sure what he can do in order to balance a budget and have a more fiscally responsible administration than happened over the last 8 years, and then have a school board or have a local elected officials in a township raise taxes to a point, such as Westchester, 20% tax increase, that causes pain to the public. So there has to be fiscal responsibility at the local level, and your elected officials that you have here today, coupled with the ones that are on our ballot, will do just that and be fiscally responsible. And let me make one other commercial, if I could. The other races that are important are the judge races. We have an amazing opportunity to win with Anne-Marie Wheatcraft. Where are you, Anne-Marie? Stand up, please. To win the Democrat primary for judge. There are two candidates, particularly one of them, I'm not going to get into who they are or whatever, are not qualified to be judges. Just simply as that, take that from my professional side. They are not qualified to be on the 7th floor of our Justice Center. They're just not, period. We hear through a rumor that they realize that we have this opportunity. Anne-Marie is first on the ballot. Unfortunately, Mark Tanell is fourth on the ballot. But he has that same opportunity if we work hard through election day to get them elected. And imagine what we could do to push them back for 2012 if we beat them in their own primary. And we win that seat now. But what they're saying now is they found out that Anne-Marie Wheatcraft is pro-life. So there's going to be a big push for everybody on the Democrat, because the Democrats are voting in this Democrat primary, to see if they can prevent a pro-life judicial candidate that's a Republican from winning their primary. So I'm asking you to do this. I'm asking you that if you could help us as a volunteer on that day. Now it's going to be a little tricky because you can't give out pro-life literature in a Democrat primary. That just isn't going to work. We have to be very quiet about it. But let's push back on them. And if you would push back on them, see our wonderful friend, ex-state chairman and county chairman Alan Novak. He is organizing this campaign for us, and he can tell you what you can do. So I want to thank you all for all that you do, but most of all for what? All that you're going to do. Thank you all.